Sam Bankman-Fried became a legend before he was 30. A guy in a stretched t-shirt and with disheveled hair, who did not fit into the classic images of businessmen, built a crypto empire that seemed invincible. His exchange, FTX, grew at breakneck speed. Its logos shone in stadiums, its commercials were aired during the Super Bowl, its name was known to presidents, athletes, celebrities. He was called a genius, a financial prophet, a new hero of his generation. And then came November 2022. The empire, which was valued at tens of billions of dollars, collapsed in just a few days. People lost money, trust disappeared, and Sam himself went from being the golden boy of the crypto industry to being the accused. Trial, handcuffs, loud headlines in all the world's media. His path became one of the most dramatic falls in the history of business. And here comes the question everyone has been asking. How did this happen? How did a man who promised to change the world and did everything he could to appear honest become the symbol of the biggest crash of the cryptocurrency era? And to answer that, we need to go back a few years, to a time when he was still a nobody, when his room was littered with banks from energy companies, when there was almost no order in his life, and the only thing he had was insane stubbornness and a dream that seemed too naive to be true. It was there, in that chaos, that the story of FTX began. I was nobody. There was always chaos in the MIT dorms. Someone was coding at night, someone was practicing for a startup pitch, and someone was just losing themselves in endless parties. Sam stood aside. He wasn't the kind of guy you'd approach with a business idea or ask for advice. On the contrary, he was often underestimated. Hair that he almost never combed, t-shirts with sauce stains, sneakers that were long overdue for the trash. He looked like a person who didn't care. And that's exactly why many thought he would never be able to do anything great. But there was something about him that they didn't see. Sam could sit up at night, staring at a monitor, while others were long asleep. He could spend hours figuring out little things that most people would find meaningless. And then, when others gave up, he stayed. Stubbornness was all he really had. His first steps in crypto looked pathetic. No one took him seriously. Cryptocurrency? It's a joke, his teachers said. His friends twiddled their fingers at his temples. He had to listen to the fact that there was no future there, that he was wasting his time. And the hardest thing was that sometimes he himself believed it. When you sit up at night and there is no result, when your transactions are burning red and instead of profit you see minuses, doubt eats you from the inside. But one day he tasted victory. A small deal, seemingly insignificant. Just a few $1,000s in profit. But it changed everything. Because then he realized, it's possible. The system is not perfect. It can be beaten. And even though there was no applause, no recognition, for him it was a moment of triumph. For the first time, he felt that his stubbornness had meaning. That his chaotic world, where there were no rules and no discipline, could lead to something greater. He was still the boy no one talked about, the boy no one took seriously. But inside him, there was already faith, a small fire that was starting to burn. And that fire would soon become a flame that would change the world. The first success was sweet, but very short-lived. A small victory was immediately followed by a big defeat. Sam tried to repeat his trick, but the market had changed. Algorithms that worked yesterday were losing money today. Everything he had earned began to melt away like water through his fingers. He was only in his early 20s, and suddenly he felt his world coming crashing down. He sat in his room, staring at his laptop screen, the numbers glowing red, and felt something heavy clench in his chest. It wasn't just the loss of money. It was the feeling that he was a fool, that everyone who was laughing was right. And that's when the conversation started. Some friends advised me to stop, find a normal job. You're smart, you'll have a stable salary. Others said bluntly, you'll never win at these systems. It's not for you. Even my parents hinted that it would be good to think about something real. But Sam had another problem. He had already seen that it was possible. He had seen the loopholes. He had seen the imperfections of the system. And now he couldn't give up, because then it would mean one thing, admitting that everyone around him was right and he was wrong. But there was almost no money left. He could have just given up. But instead he took the extreme step of taking out loans. He took them from friends, acquaintances, those who believed at least a little. They gave him sideways glances, asked, "Are you sure?" And he answered, "Yes, I know what I'm doing." In fact, he didn't know anything for sure. It was a risk on the verge of madness. Several times he almost burned out completely. At night he dreamed of failures, betrayals, even the thought that he would not give anything to anyone, because he himself would be left with nothing. This was his first real crisis, and it was she who taught him the main thing. In this world, the winner is not the one who has the resources, but the one who doesn't give up. You can fall, you can lose, but if you come back, you are dangerous. Sam returned, and after this crisis, he was a different man. Instead of a naive boy hoping for a miracle, he became a cold strategist who knew that every step he took was a war. After the first crisis, Sam became different. He stopped waiting for success to knock on his door. He began to look for weaknesses, small flaws that could be overcome unnoticed. And one evening he found. It was a simple but incredibly rare thing: the difference in cryptocurrency prices between the US and Japanese exchanges. For most, it was invisible. They saw the numbers, the charts, the headlines, but they didn't see the opportunity. Sam saw it, and he acted. The night was quiet. The dorm lights flickered, and he sat at his laptop, the keyboard clicking like a drum in a march. He made his first arbitrage deals. Buy cheaper here, sell more expensive there. Each transaction brought a small profit, and then some more, and some more. And suddenly the impossible happened for him then. In a few months, he earned his first million. The numbers on the screen flashed green, and Sam's heart beat wildly. For the first time, he understood a profound truth. I can beat the system. And not just survive, I can win. This moment was a turning point. He realized that his stubbornness and long hours without sleep had not been in vain. The world seemed chaotic, but chaos had patterns, and he learned to see them. This breakthrough began a true transformation. Sam was no longer just a student trying to survive in the crypto world. He became a thinker, a strategist, and a player at a level that others only dreamed of. And it was then that the idea for FTX was born, an exchange that was to become his big breakthrough into the world of finance. After that breakthrough, Sam didn't want to stay on small deals anymore. He saw the scale. He saw that cryptocurrency could become not just a game for the chosen ones, but a whole new world of finance, where the rules could be built anew. And then the idea of FTX was born, an exchange that was supposed to be honest, transparent, and completely different. At first, it was a small team, a few people who believed in his idea. They didn't wear suits. They didn't follow corporate etiquette. Open space, laptops on the tables, posters with inspirational quotes on the walls, music playing loudly, and a constant feeling that they were doing something more than a business. They were building the future. Sam said that FTX is not just for making money. He wanted to create a system that you can trust, so that every user feels safe, so that money does not disappear without a trace, so that the exchange is transparent and fair. It was bold, because most of the market then worked according to completely different rules, and many did not even think about transparency. The first steps were chaotic. Server problems, failed transactions, software bugs. Sometimes it seemed that the exchange would never get back on its feet. But the team moved forward. Sam was everywhere, as a strategist, as a developer, and as a motivational leader. He spent nights checking code, sitting on conference calls until dawn, trying to solve a problem that could cost the company its reputation. One morning, when everything seemed to be working perfectly, he walked into his office, looked at the team, and said quietly but confidently, "We've built something that's a real game changer. We're not just trading crypto. We're building an empire." In that moment, they all felt it, the feeling that they were doing something more than just a business. FTX began to grow rapidly. Users noticed the difference: a clear interface, fast transactions, fair rules. Investors began to pay attention. And Sam was still the same guy in a wrinkled t-shirt who never wore a tie, but he had already become a symbol of a new approach to finance. This stage became the foundation of his great breakthrough. For the first time, he felt that his dream of an honest, transparent, and innovative world could become a reality. And at the same time, he realized that with great power comes great responsibility. FTX was no longer just a small exchange. It had become a brand that everyone knew. The FTX logo appeared in major stadiums, on champions' jerseys, on billboards in New York and Los Angeles. Sam and his team felt like they were on top of the world. Every day their empire grew. They signed deals with famous athletes, movie stars, investors who previously considered cryptocurrency an unnecessary game. Each new deal was like proof that they were on the right track. Sam began speaking at conferences. Thousands of people listened to him. He became a symbol of a new generation of financiers, people who played differently and changed the rules of the game. The most powerful moment came when Sam took the stage at a major crypto conference. The sounds of applause filled the hall. The cameras flashed. The lights were directed directly at him. And for the first time, he felt that everything he had been doing for years had borne fruit. Thousands of eyes looked at him with respect, admiration, and some even envy. At that moment, he realized, we did it. We became giants. But with success came new challenges. Every mistake could now cost millions, and sometimes reputation. Sam knew that standing at the top didn't mean standing still. He became attentive to detail, looking for new opportunities, expanding FTX to new countries, launching new products. Every step was strategic. Every decision was risky, but necessary. The team felt like they were part of something bigger than just a business. They were making history, and that feeling made them invincible, at least for that moment. They were on top of the world, and it seemed like nothing and no one could stop them. But life always has its surprises. And right now, in his moments of greatness, Sam didn't know that the next crisis was approaching, the one that would change everything forever. It's always cold at the top of the world. Sometimes that cold starts to seep through even the armor of success. For Sam, the first cracks appeared unexpectedly. At first, quietly. Easy questions from investors, suspicious comments in the media, not entirely clear reports. Friends, colleagues, and users began to ask questions. Was everything really as transparent as he promised? Rumors spread quickly. Some people said that users' money was not being used quite as it should be. And he had a feeling of anxiety inside him, as if a storm was brewing somewhere on the horizon. But he didn't stop. Sam told himself, I'll save it later. Now I have to move forward, scale, grow. I know what I'm doing. He continued to sign big deals, give interviews, and appear calm to the world. But deep down, he knew the truth. There was a problem, and it wasn't small anymore. The team was also starting to feel the tension. Some employees were asking questions that no one had dared to ask before. Sam listened, but delaying answers, explaining with words of hope, became his standard strategy. He pretended that everything was under control, but the storm was already approaching. And the truth, as always, catches up. The very cracks he ignored were growing, and soon there would come a point when they would be impossible to hide. Little did he know that these small cracks would grow into a breach that would turn his empire upside down. But even at this moment, Sam did not lose his determination. In his head, there was a formula. You can fall, but to fall without a fight is not an option. This storm, he knew, would be a test that would show who he really was, a leader or just a man who dreamed of glory. November 2022. What everyone feared became a reality. People were withdrawing their money en masse. Billions of dollars melted away in a matter of hours. Red was burning everywhere on the monitors. The company's balance sheet, numbers, graphs, messages from banks and partners. Sam stood in the middle of the office, surrounded by chaos. Phones ringing non-stop, journalists shouting from the lobby, reporters storming the entrances, employees crying, some jumping from one office to another in panic. He saw the eyes of people who had believed in them yesterday, and today were filled with fear and disbelief. Sam did everything he could. He talked on the phone, texted, called his partners, tried to find any solution. But even he understood the truth. FTX would not exist tomorrow. This was not just a failure. It was an apocalypse that he felt even more deeply than anyone around him. Night fell on the city, and that was when he was left alone in the large, empty office. The sounds of sirens, the ringing of phones, the lights of monitors, it all blended into a chaotic hum. Sam sat down, put his head in his hands, and for the first time felt the weight of everything he had created. He saw more than just the numbers of the losses. He saw the shattered dreams, the trust he had lost, the people he had hurt. It was the night he realized the vast empire he had spent years building could disappear in an instant. And there was no more, "I'll save it later" time left. It was the end, or the beginning of something new. The world that had recently given him a standing ovation now greeted him with screams and condemnation. Courtrooms, handcuffs, newspaper headlines with his portrait, all this became part of Sam's new, bitter life. People called him a fraud, a traitor, a symbol of the fall of the crypto era. His empire, FTX, was destroyed. Billions of dollars were gone. Trust was shattered, and even those who once admired his genius turned away, hiding their own. He himself felt a contrast that few could understand. On the one hand, a guy who was able to beat the system, who created an empire from scratch, who seemed like a fearless leader of a new generation. On the other, a broken man, crushed inside, sitting in a cell, listening to yet another accusation and realizing all his dreams, even the sincere ones, that he wanted to change the world, have now become a reason for condemnation. Sam didn't give up on himself. He said, "I was just trying to save everything I had built. I wanted to make the system fair, give people a chance, give the market transparency. I didn't want to betray anyone." But the words that had once inspired thousands now seemed empty. They were lost in the criticism. This moment was a lesson you never forget. He felt the full weight of his decisions, mistakes, and ambitions. The hero had become a criminal, and the criminal had become a man who knew that true responsibility was heavier than any glory. Sam saw the contrast between who he had been and who he had become, and he realized that even the greatest genius. And yet, in this fall, there remained a deep honesty. For he could still face the truth, admit his mistakes, and think about the lessons that remain for him. Sam sits across from you, and it feels like time has stopped. He's no longer talking about charts, the stock market, or earnings. He's talking about life, and his words carry far more weight than any of mine. "I realized," he says quietly, "that a real dream is not measured by money. It is measured by how honest you are with yourself and others, how willing you are to not give up." He talks about the stubbornness that once made him invincible. Now he understands its price. It can lift you to heaven, or it can break you to pieces. But without it, no one. "I wanted to change the system," Sam continues. "I wanted to be a hero to the people. And I was, but in my own way." When you're at the top, you see that your actions affect more than just you. You're responsible for the people you lead. Sometimes, he shares what remains after the fall. The courage to admit mistakes, the ability to face the truth and turn crisis into fuel for the future. He says that now it is important not only to dream, but also to understand the price of your dream and the price of your future. You can start small, but dream big. Quality is more important than speed. Adapt quickly. Turn crisis into fuel. Lead, don't follow. These aren't just business lessons. They're life lessons, he says, looking you straight in the eye. And finally, he adds, this story is not just about me or FTX. It's about each of us. True success is the courage to change and move forward, no matter what. Don't be afraid to fall. Be afraid not to get up. And then you realize that even after a disaster, after the loss of billions and reputation, there remains a truth that will never disappear. Lessons, the ability to grow yourself, the courage to dream.